When I think about the privilege, the blessing that I get to share the Word of God in our services, I really get excited. You see, the Word of God is powerful, and it's powerful because it's life-changing. And when life changes because of truth that was shared, my heart stirs and this spiritual revival happens to me, and it's almost as if I can't get enough. I hope that you can make it to our services at least once, just so that you can experience the atmosphere of a group of loving, thankful, and imperfect people that join us each week. I'm one of them, and I know you'll be blessed.
All right, Proverbs is where we are today. Proverbs chapter number 22. We're going to go to our text verse today. Proverbs chapter number 22. Thanks for being in church today. Truly, I am very much looking forward to speaking on this subject today, and I'm very thankful for each of you being with us today. We are in part 2 of our sermon series, Making Change. Last week, we talked about less is more, and your homework this week was to memorize Ecclesiastes 4:6. Better is an handful with quietness than both the hands full with travail and vexation of spirit. What's the idea? If I only had one handful and I have one hand open, if somebody needed a hand up, what can I do? I can help them. If they need a hand out, I can help them. If somebody needs, and I got to thinking about this too, because truly, this is making change, and this whole thing is not just a financial opportunity to understand some things. This is a spiritual thing. This is a scriptural thing. If you had one hand available, it's also included in worship. See, if you have both the hands full, you can't even worship. You're just so cluttered in your heart, you're cluttered in your mind. So better is one hand full with quietness than both the hands full with travail and vexation of spirit. And so that was last week. Today I'm talking about stress is bad. Next week, week 3 is giving is good, and then week 4 is tomorrow matters. So I'm going to be very annoying today, and I don't care because I want you to remember this months and months from now or a year from now when it matters. So everybody with me, ready? Less is more, stress is bad, giving is good, tomorrow matters. One more time, less is more, stress is bad, giving is good, and tomorrow matters. Very important that you understand this because we are making change, guys. We're making change, and it takes change in your life to make change in your pocketbook. It takes change in your life to make change in your marriage. It takes change in your life to make change in your children, so on and so forth. We want the ripple effect of less is more, stress is bad, giving is good, and tomorrow matters. Okay, so I'm going to be annoying today with those things. Forgive me for being annoying, but please understand that repetition is the key to learning in many aspects. So today, we're going to talk about stress. By the way, there's many different types of stress, right? We often talk about relational stress. Matter of fact, that's the bulk of how we preach application type of studies. We talk about marital stress, relationship. Okay, let's take the financial stress out of it for a second because that's the bulk of what I'm talking about today. We have relational stress. We have friendship stresses. We have children to parent stresses, and we have parent to children stresses, so on and so forth. All these stressors are in our life, and we understand that, especially when it comes to spousal relationships. Ladies, right? Men, we feel stress when our ladies feel stress, don't we? Here's what's so important about you ladies. You are the spirit of a home. Your husband can walk in like, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, come in, shut the door, put his cardigan on, change his shoes, and howdy, neighbor. And all of a sudden you walk around the corner and you got that look. Immediately he's like, okay, what's up? Changes the whole mood of the night, doesn't it? That's a stress. That's a relationship stress. Ladies, not only are you the spirit of a home, by the way, this is why we protect our young ladies. This is why we protect them. We need to keep their spirit soft, their spirit sensitive. This came out in practical mode the other day when I dropped off my daughter, my 14-year-old, for softball. And during practice, it was they were playing this music that talked about things that only adults should do, from alcohol to intimate situations. And I thought, wait a second. You're all 14-year-olds. Let's talk about the game. And it's sort of a little blowout. And I just told the coach, we're leaving. And, what if we have to forfeit the game? You'll have to deal with that. Because I'm trying to protect the spirit of my daughter. We have to do that. Not only are you the spirit, ladies, in your home, you're also the spirit of the church. That's why we got to protect gossip. We have to protect that because gossip becomes vomit. It's toxic. It's demonic. And those things tend to happen in the spirit of a church. And let me tell you, that's stress. That's a lot of stress on leadership. That's a lot of stress on your friendships. It divides people from other people. It creates loyalties where no loyalties belong. Your loyalty belongs to Jesus Christ. Those are stressors. Gentlemen, when you refuse to love your wife, when you refuse to be to your wife what she needs, the security, when she needs the emotional stability, these are stressors in our relationships. Those exist. And let me just tell you, stress is bad. Stress is bad. So we talk most often about those types of stresses, and we'll continue. Very rarely do we actually have a financial series. We try to do it once a year, but it's different. But I'm going directly after your habits with money, because most of the majority of the counseling that I do is about finances. Matter of fact, financial stress is so bad, I've never heard anyone ever in the history of talking to people, which has been my whole life, I've never heard anybody say, I just love my credit card debt. I wish the interest rate would go higher. I absolutely love it. Before we had debt, Pastor, my husband and I argued all the time. Now that we have debt, we don't argue at all. We don't argue at all. We love debt. Nobody ever says that. Ever. But most of us know people, I know people, we all know people who say things like this: I wish we could give more to help people who are in need. Man, I wish I could give to that. I wish that one of us could stay home with the kids, but that's not even close to being an option because we have this stress in our life. Pastor, we're fighting all the time about our money, about our finances. I wish we could travel, but that's not even something we can consider, right? Does this sound familiar? I've said this in my life. You've said this in your life. We know people in our life saying these things. Why? Because if we have financial stress is very bad. It causes divorces. And when you stood behind an altar and you said, for better or worse, for richer, for poorer. Now, I do many weddings a year, and oftentimes I'll hear for Richard or poorer. I'm like, who's Richard, right? And the guy's name isn't Richard. No, okay, I thought that was funny. Anyways, for richer or poorer. And by the way, if the practical side of what I'm talking about today doesn't help you, let the spiritual side of it, because some of you are kind of tuning out. Oh, here we go with money. But you're the same people that tune out when it comes to relationship and marriage counseling. Not any one person can have it all together, so please don't sit there like you have it figured out, because I certainly don't. So it's very difficult as you talk through these real life subjects and matters because you know it's hurting your relationships. And by the way, it's embarrassing, isn't it? It becomes embarrassing when the pastor has to step on toes, when the pastor has to step on his own toes, when the pastor has to say some things that are uncomfortable. Don't tune it out. If the practical side of what I'm talking about today doesn't help you, then let the spiritual side. If you're a follower of Jesus, if you're following hard after Jesus, then let the spiritual side of what we're about to talk about speak into your heart. Don't tune it out, take it in, okay? So the challenging thing is this: a lot of people just really don't understand. They don't have any understanding about how money works. There's a young man, what happens is they get sucked into materialism that the world provides. And it's difficult, it's tough. I've fallen prey to it. There's a young man who came up through our youth group. And some of you people who've been in the church a while would know this person. I won't say names. But he graduated high school. He began to go to learn a trade. By the way, he learned a good trade, a welder. And by the way, let me just put this advice out to you. If you're a young man or a young lady and you're looking for what to do in the future, might I suggest to you the trades? Learn to weld. Learn to be an electrician. Learn to be a mechanic. You know why? You can move anywhere in the entire world and have a job. But if you get a bachelor's degree in lesbian dance theory, there's not many jobs out there. Or French art in the 16th century. You're not going to get a lot of that. What I'm saying, learn a trade. Sometimes trade schools are 2 years. Sometimes they're 9 months. You can get your journeyman's card. You can go anywhere. Might I suggest to you that? Because ultimately, that's what you end up being anyways, wishing in your 30s you'd have had that back in your late teens and early 20s. So let me suggest to you, if you don't know what to do, learn a trade. Learn a trade, learn a skill, learn these things. It's very important to you, okay? But this young man, he got a good job. he got a good job welding, and he's like, Pastor, I didn't learn at home. My parents were always spending, and, I don't get the concept of money. Help me out. So I began to meet with this young man. And as we began to meet, he pulls up one day in a truck. He comes out, what'd you buy? I bought a truck. Okay. But it's used, Pastor, it's used. Oh, whew, because that's the number one thing I was concerned about. I said, okay, how much did you pay? He said $28,000. Now, men, we know there's trucks out there $40,000 to $60,000. Okay, so $28,000, relatively speaking, is not a whole lot for a truck. I get that. But when you are 19 and you just start a trade, that's not a smart move. Okay, so I said, okay, how long is the loan for? 72 months. Okay, 6 years. How much is your interest rate? 15%. But he said it to me like, that's good, right? So here I am trying not to strangle the kid, trying not to just scream at him. I'm trying to be pastoral. Well, young man, I said, okay, well, do you want help on this or you're just giving me facts? Well, I can afford the payments. Okay. But just for learning purposes, let's see what this looks like. So I pulled out my phone and got on the Google machine and I looked up a interest rate calculator. I said, okay, 72 months, 28,000, 15%. I said, for learning purposes, let's look at what this does. A total of 72 monthly payments equals out at 15%, $43,200. Total interest paid, $15,200. So I said, after 6 or 7 years, when this thing's paid off, how much do you think your truck's worth? After all the miles you put on it, right? And then I was saying but knowing your character, what I've seen in you, more than likely a year from now, you're going to get tired of it. You're going to trade it in, flip that loan over, and it's going to, right? And many of us have been there. We've been there. I said, but after 6 or 7 years, when this thing's paid off, all the miles, how much do you think it's going to be worth? What's the resale? 7 years, I don't know, 8 to 10,000. Okay, we're going to pay $43,200 for something that's worth 8 to 10,000 6 or 7 years from now when it's finally paid off. So $15,200, it's not even worth the interest that you paid on it, and that just doesn't add up in algebra. Now, again, I was not challenging him as if, you dumb, idiot head face. I wasn't saying it that way. I was just saying because he didn't understand. Look, many people graduate from high school, they go to college, they get a degree, a 4-year bachelor's degree from a college, and they don't know how money works. It's not taught necessarily unless you seek after this type of teaching, unless your parents literally sat down with you and said, Junior, here's how you write a checkbook. By the way, look over to the right-hand side. That tells you how much you have. Okay, now don't get me wrong. You guys have heard me say it over and over and over again. I thought if I had checks in my checkbook, I had money. There's some people out there like, right, that's how it works, right? No, if you have checks in your checkbook, that means you're not writing checks, okay? That doesn't mean you have money in your bank account because you have checks in your checkbook. That's how it was. I remember one time a buddy of mine had a good business idea. Eric, hey, we're looking for bridge investors. We're looking for $1,000. Okay, no problem. Do you take credit cards? Yep. There you go. Gave him $1,000. I paid interest on to pay off, and his business never got off the ground. I never saw it back, nor did I get my investment return. That was stupid. We've all made dumb mistakes, and this young man learned the way that many of us learn, the hard way. So the challenge is many people just don't necessarily understand. And by the way, many of us get very embarrassed by that. And when you get embarrassed, your pride meter turns up. And when your pride meter turns up, you'll look somebody dead in the eye that told you truth, smack to your face, and you'll say, I'm going to do it that way anyways, because you're embarrassed. And when you become embarrassed, and your pride takes off, it's the pride that ruins marriages, it ruins job opportunities, it ruins so much about your life, and because of the stress. Stress is bad. So what do we understand? Here we are in Proverbs chapter number 22, verse number 7. Proverbs 22:7, here's the principal verse. The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is what? Servant. If you have another version besides King James, anybody, what's it say? Oh, nobody. Bless God, we're a church, King James only. It says slave. Slave. The borrower is slave to the lender. The borrower is servant to. How many of you have a job right now and you're like, wait, what are you doing today? Oh, I'm going slaving at work. And how many of you got a second job? Or you're always looking for overtime. Why? Man, I got to pay this bill. I got to pay this bill. And so you get less time with your family. We write songs, The Cat's in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon, right? All that other stuff. Why? Daddy didn't spend enough time with me. Why? Because he's chasing his job, chasing his overtime, chasing these things. And the borrower becomes slave to this. So I become a servant to who I owe money to. And by the way, I'm talking beyond your water bill, your power bill, your mortgage, right? Those are basic bills you could probably pay with $15 an hour. But it's all this overtime and all this second job stuff that it's like, I want more, I want more, I want more. It keeps going. Then the debt's out of control. It's a struggle at home. It's a struggle even at work. How can I get my raise? Where do I go? And you chase all these rainbows and there's no pot of gold there except for destruction. The borrower is servant to the lender. The rich ruleth over the poor. So when we owe, we're in bondage to that. And by the way, I don't want to be in bondage to someone. And that's why I, as your pastor, I'm trying to beg you to plug in, stay engaged here today, and be here for the rest of this series as I do my best to help you. Because I believe with all my heart, God wants something better for his kids. If you're a follower of Jesus, you're a kid as his. Just for a second, imagine what it would be like to have no financial stress. Think about this. If something breaks, you just pay for it. You don't say, how are we going to pay for this? Something breaks, you pay for it. How cool is that? Hey, the car broke down. Honey, how are we going to pay for this? Do we have extra money? I got to start taking an Uber to work until we can save up enough to fix this thing, right? No, you're able to pay for it. What would it be like to go pay cash for something with no monthly payments? That's what financial freedom does. That's what the stress takes away. And imagine if you got a week off for vacation, and guess what your biggest problem is? You can't decide where to go. The mountains or the beach? The beach or the mountains? I can't decide. And you and your spouse argue, and the only argument is where to go, not how to pay for it. Because you have options. That's what the margin, if somebody needed help, somebody needed a hand up, somebody needed a hand out, somebody out there is like, man, I can do that. I can fit that bill. I can truly help this person. I can help them. And by the way, again, if the practical side doesn't motivate you, the spiritual side ought to. What did Jesus say? He said, hey, if you're faithful with little, I'm going to bless you with much. That's the principle. And if we are not good stewards of the manifold grace of God, or a good steward of the resources he's provided us with, spiritually, we are not good Christians. A good Christian is not the person who doesn't smoke, drink, and chew or hang around with those that do. That's not what the bulk of it. Matter of fact, if you're a good Christian, that's who you're hanging out with because you're trying to win them. Right? You're trying to win them to Christ. If a Christian only bubbles himself, him or her, around only other Christians, where's the iron sharpening iron? Where is the salt and light in this world? So on and so forth. So what I'm saying is, we have to learn this. The rich ruleth over the poor, and Jesus says this. We have to live with integrity. So, here's what we're going to do. This very practical side of it, I just named a few practical things. Now we're going to totally switch gears and be very spiritual about this. So as you and your family go on this journey of a stress-free life, of a debt-free life, there's 3 prayers I want you to consider. Because if you don't get God involved in it, you're going to struggle. So let me give you 3 prayers that I hope will become a part of just your relationship with Jesus and deciding to honor him with managing the things that he trusts to you. Here's first prayer. Prayer number 1. God, give me self-control. Everybody say it with me. God, give me self-control. Give me self-control. If you're a follower and a believer of the Lord Jesus Christ, part of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. The last one, temperance, that's what temperance is. Galatians 5:22 and 23. Faith, goodness, meekness, love, joy, peace, all that stuff. And the last one, temperance, is self-control. It's part of the fruit, so now we have to help the self-control. Every one of us has a little 3-year-old kid inside of us, don't we? You ever seen a 3-year-old kid at the grocery store? And you're looking at your wife, you're like, oh my goodness. But now that we've had kids and ours are past that, now we're like, oh, that poor lady, because we know what she's going through. Some of us, we had that 3-year-old kid, right? The tantrums, they happen occasionally. And we all have that inside. I want it, gimme, gimme, gimme. And we have that. So here's the idea. Proverbs 25:28 tells us this. I think it's up here. He that has no rule over his own spirit, you have no self-control, you're angry at the drop of a hat, you're angry for the sake of being angry, or perhaps you're contrary for the sake of argument. How many of us know people like that in our lives? How many of you are that person? Yeah, stop. So don't be argumentative for the sake of it. If you have no rule over your own spirit, what are you like? You're like a city that's broken down without walls. So the analogy was, in those ancient days, cities had walls built around them for protection. Walls for protection. That's what the cities had. And if you have no rule over your own spirit, you're just like that. Because if there's no protection, if there's no wall that's built around it, you become vulnerable to attacks. You become vulnerable to what the world, the enemy, all these things come in. You're vulnerable to worldliness. You're vulnerable to ungodliness. You become vulnerable to all these things. So if you're vulnerable when the walls are broken down, it's because you have no self-control. So now, ladies, if I could just pick on you for a second, okay? Ladies, when you're walking by a clearance rack. By the way, ladies, you know, and I'm meddling here. Give me self-control, Lord. I'm meddling here. Ladies, you know that you're vulnerable to whatever's on sale. My wife, she has a binder, like perfectly organized with all this coupon stuff. By the way, who says coupon and who says coupon? Okay, let me see your hand if you say coupon. You're all weird. If you say it properly and say coupon, who says it right? It's the same. Okay, interesting. Let me ask you a question. For argument's sake, those of you that say it right, ask your significant other. Do you say group or do you say group? There's a group of people, or do you say group of people? Think about it. So it's not coupon, it's coupon. Moving on. Ladies, you go to the store, you buy that little trinket that you saw that was on sale, that happened to match the bracelet that you liked. Of course, this necklace goes with that, and I just got to get an outfit to match it because you can't have those either way. Then you come home and say, honey, look how much money I saved, right? We get into that kind of thing. And ladies, you nickel and dime, nickel and dime, nickel and dime. So ladies, say, God, give me self-control. We need self-control. Now, guys, we're different, aren't we? We just blow the whole ship all out at once, don't we? Right? You come home, I bought a boat, and I bought twin Sea-Doos. And I had to have a truck to pull it with. Honey, all we need is the lake house, right? We blow the ship all up at once, don't we? And it's God, give me self-control. We need this in our lives, guys. We have to have self-control because if you want extreme results to some degree, you have to have a really extreme lifestyle. So everybody say, give me self-control. Give me self-control. So here's what we're going to do, okay? And some of you, this is what you came for, okay? Listen to this statement, okay? If you've already learned this statement, let me remind you of this statement so you can make this statement to somebody who needs this statement. What we're going to do is this. We're going to learn to say no. Everybody say no. No. Why are we going to say no? Because we're going to say no for a little while so that we can say yes for the rest of our lives. Some of you, this is it. This is what you came for. You need to be set free with this statement. Say no for a little while so that you can say yes for the rest of your life. And we're going to learn the discipline and we're going to learn to say no so that we can eventually say yes. By the way, I don't know how this is going to play out for you, but somewhere in your life, this is going to play out for you. Ladies, you might like going out and getting your nails done. Learn to say no for a little while so you can say yes for the rest of your life. By the way, ladies, if you're honest, you're not getting your nails done for your man. You're getting them done for other ladies, okay? In my circle of man friends and at the men's Bible study, and you men that go to the Bible study, you know what we talk about in there, the Bible, right? Anyway, so I've never heard a guy say, dude, bro, did you see the nails on her? They had like dots and hearts on them. Never. Learn to say no for a little while so that you can say yes later on. We may say no for a little while and say yes for the rest of our lives. And the idea, by the way, say no to a $5 coffee and say yes to grocery store brand. for a little while so that later on you can have any kind of coffee you want. And I'm preaching to myself because I like good coffee. I'm willing to pay those prices, but say no for a little while so you can say yes for the rest of your life. You may want a brand new car with a brand new car sale, but learn to say no right now. Get in that fixer-upper for a little while so that you can say yes and have whatever kind of car you want later on in the future when you're debt-free, when you don't have to worry about it. So many of us in our lives need to learn self-control. Let me tell you a little bit of our personal story. Early on, I wouldn't say early on, 5-6 years ago, early on in our ministry, we learned of a guy named Dave Ramsey, and we began to listen to his podcast. We watched his show on the YouTubes, and so we subscribed. We took this class called Financial Peace University, and it blew our minds. We began to ascribe to these things, and here's how he said it. He says, if you live like no one else, then one day you can live and give like no one else. Right now, if you live like no one else, meaning you're actually saving, you're going extreme, you live within your means. You ever heard of that idea? You live within your means, like meaning that if you make a certain amount of money, that's how you live, as if you only make that certain amount of money. And he says, if you live like no one else, then later on you can live and give like no one else. Because no one else, in your context now, is doing that. So later on, they're not what you can do. Right? Now you get to live like no one else. You get to do the things that you wanted to do. And so we wanted to become completely debt-free, my wife and I. So we ascribed to what he said. We bought into it because we knew stress was bad and we didn't want that burden. So we went crazy. We stopped buying gifts for one another. Matter of fact, we still don't buy gifts for one another very often. Neither one of us has the love language of gifts, so it's not important. Don't get me wrong. When days, by the way, she's not my mom, so I didn't get her anything today. Why would I? She's not my mom. My mom's 3,000 miles away. So anyways, what I'm saying is that was supposed to be a joke. I'm not that much of a jerk, okay, guys? What I'm saying is we stopped doing that because we got on a spending freeze for a little while because in 8 months we paid off $18,000. And we don't make that much money. I got a second job. She got a second job. She babysat. She took up this job, taking photos for an inspection company. You name it. We began to do this. We took it seriously because we learned to say no for a little while so that we could say yes for the rest of our lives. We didn't go out to eat unless we had to buy one, get one. Buy one, get one. We didn't eat desserts. We didn't eat the appetizers. We ended up, I know it sounds crazy, huh? We didn't do those things. And to this day, these are still some of the habits that we have. And we became crazy like that. We lived beneath our means because it was important. Some of you say, well, I'm 48 or I'm 52 or I'm older. Okay, start where you are right now. God will begin to do these things in your life. You honor him with those things now. Then later on, ladies, you can get your nails done every single day if you want. And maybe you can afford to pay for all your girlfriends to get theirs done. Guys, same thing. If you like to golf, take them all golfing at the same time because you've paid it off and you've done those things. So everybody say, give me self-control. Self-control. Here's the second prayer. God, give me understanding. God, give me understanding. The first one was, God, give me self-control. And the second one that's going to come up on the screen at any second now is going to say, God, give me understanding. God, give me understanding. Let's be honest, like we said about the guy with the truck earlier, so many people just don't understand numbers and how they work. So Hosea 4:6 says it pretty clearly. Hosea chapter 4, verse number 6 says it like this. My people are destroyed about what? Yeah. How many of you in an employment opportunity, you had to hire and fire somebody and you fired them because of what? Lack of knowledge. Like, what are you doing, man? You're not getting this. And then so God goes on to say, because you've rejected knowledge, I'm going to reject you and you can't be a priest to me. Remember the teaching about Josh? He tells us about that. Priesthood of the believer. If you're a saved person in Jesus Christ, you need to learn to be a priest. But he says if you have a lack of knowledge, you can't be a priest. You have to understand these things. If you want to be a true worshiper, hey, listen, being stress-free and debt-free, it's about your spirituality. It really is. Not only does it help you in your character levels, I had somebody recently, I'm counseling somebody who has a drug and alcohol issue who's a very young person. And somebody in their life had to come to me and say, Pastor, you started talking to them about their finances and what their finances ought to look like when they're doing this stuff. I need you to counsel them about their drug and drinking problem. And I said, well, I appreciate your input on my counsel, but you asked this was part of what I was doing. Here's why I'm doing it. If I can take the surface level and get their habits correct here, then the deeper rooted issues are going to be corrected later on. Because what are they doing now? People with addictions, what do? They steal, and then they try to hide. If you're married to somebody with an addiction, whether it's pornography, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, they often try to hide those things in the bank account because it's this secretive thing, and it all comes back to money. Money, money, money. If I can get those habits corrected, then I can get the habits corrected that are much deeper. My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge is what it is. God, give me self-control, and God, give me understanding. So the challenge is this. In our culture today, when somebody's buying things, they ask two questions. You probably thought of them. How much down? How much a month? They never ask, how much am I really going to pay for this thing, right? So you have to get understanding. Now listen to me. I'm a pastor. I'm not a financial expert. But I've done my best to get understanding on this. I've done my best to get understanding on these things. And I want to help you. And so with that being said, I'm saying you need to get understanding. Learn to read some books. Listen to podcasts. YouTube is free unless you subscribe to YouTube Red, but that's just stupid videos. Stupid originals. Get on YouTube. You can look at this stuff. Look, many of you are going to go home this afternoon. You're going to be put out after you've given your mom the respect that she deserves. Okay, kids, you do that. You're going to get down and you're going to binge watch something on Netflix, or you're going to get lost on YouTube like I like to do. And you're going to end up watching penguin surfboarding to I got lost last night on guys trimming out horse hooves. Yeah. So purposely get on there, Dave Ramsey, or financial expert, Tony Robbins, whatever it is. You learn these things and you do it together. Get on the same page financially. It can't be your way or highway, and it can't be her way or highway. It's got to be your guys' way is what it needs to be. So pray God to give you self-control and give you understanding, okay? Here's the third prayer. God, give me a plan. God, give me a plan. This happens with the young people all the time, right? You guys have heard me. If you've been a part of our youth group, you've heard me say it 100 times over, right? A plan is not you saying a sentence out loud. That's not a plan, okay? When you ask a young person, what you just graduated, what are you doing? If they say, I'm going to go to college, all that is an idea. That's not a plan. A goal without a plan is just a dream. And by the way, if you set a goal, and along the way you fail somewhere, don't change the goal, change the plan. You change the plan. Stop. Here's some good advice. Young people, quit quitting. Quit quitting everything because something got difficult. You have to get through these things. God, give me a plan. Proverbs 21:5 says it very simply and very easily this way. The thoughts of the diligent tend only to plenteousness. The thoughts, the plans, I'm thinking about it. I'm putting a plan to it. I'm writing this down. I'm making this happen. The thoughts of the diligent, the smart people, the people with consistent habits. These people are consistently doing something diligently. They're thinking it through. But of everyone that is hasty, everybody who's quick, everybody who's only ever spontaneous, all these things leads to want, which is another word for poverty. The thoughts of God, give me a plan. So here's what we need. We have to recognize this, and please don't miss this. Don't miss this. The first thing I really wanted you to get is that learn to say no for a little while so you can say yes for the rest of your life. Here's the next thing. Please get this. Please, please, please. You can wander into debt, but you never wander out of debt. You can stumble into debt, but you can never stumble out of debt. You can make a mistake and mistake your way into debt, but you never mistake your way out of debt. That's why you need a plan. This is spiritual. This is scripture. You've got to have a plan for these things. Less is more, and stress, guys, is bad. I'm trying to help you relieve these stressors. The anxieties you have are about paying your bills for the most part. It's about that. The anxiety you have over your grown child is because, I don't know, I got to help pay their rent. Again, I got to help bail them out of this. Again, financially, money. It's stress in your life, so we're trying to help you today. You need a plan. So when my wife and I went to FPU, Financial Peace University, we learned a plan. We learned, first of all, to have an emergency fund. Have an emergency. Before we paid off debt, he says, prove yourself you can do it. Have an emergency fund. He says, $1,000 in an emergency fund. That's your first number goal. We did that. Then we learned very practical ways how to pay off some of our debts. And then once we paid some of those debts off, we learned to set aside, get this, an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months worth of bills. Can you imagine that? Think of what you make in 1 month right now, maybe even combined. Now, times that by 3 and decide that's what you're going to have in the bank collectively. That should be very possible if you do this right, because if you have a plan, that's where you get to. And we're actually going to honor God with a plan. So what we're going to do, we're going to say no for a little while so we can say yes. So this is spiritual. Again, you say, God, give me self-control. God, give me understanding. Lord, please, please help me to have a plan. Now look, as I'm closing this now, I just want to say this. As we talk about this, we look at our lives, and it's easy to feel, oh, I wish I hadn't, or I made this mistake. Or for guys, right? Man, what's my wife going to think of me? I don't want the stressor coming home. I'm just going to hide it when she brings it up. I'm just going to stay silent. When she brings it up, I'm just going to kind of shut it down. And by the way, I know that pain. I felt that pain. When we were on that spending freeze for a while where we stopped kind of buying each other gifts for a little while and saving up money, my wife is such a tightwad. The problem was I had such a good heart and my wife didn't, okay? So I'd come to church and everybody had a fundraiser. Everybody had a fundraiser. And all these kids are cute. They're selling their cookie dough. They're selling pancake mix. They're selling blankies. They're selling Beanie Babies. I don't know, whatever they were selling. And it was like, yep, okay, yep, all right. And my wife's like, you can't be spending. And I said, babe, look at this kid. He's adorable. He's adorable. And he was selling candy bars for $2.50 a piece. I said, babe, he's just too adorable. Let me help him. Let me help. I don't care how cute he is. You cannot pay for a $2.50 candy bar. So I went over to the little boy. I said, look, young man, my tightwad wife, she won't let me give you $2.50 for that candy bar. So I said, I tell you what, here's $5. Now run, get away, young man, get away. And so then my wife chased him down and took 2 candy bars, but I know the pain of trying to work these things out. I know the pain. But start where you are. Begin with having self-control. Get some education under your belt. Get some understanding. And then have a plan. Plan these things out. We have Stephanie and Sarah. You're pregnant. You're having babies. Congratulations. I hope you have a plan when baby comes, Junior comes. You have the proverbial suitcase packed, you're ready to go. It's not like, oh, your water broke now, let me call the Uber. Let's hang out here, let me finish the show. No, you're like, yeah, you have a plan. You get that thing ready. You prepare for what you know is coming. And if you knew what was coming in the future, guys, this financial stress being passed away, you'd have a plan. You would anticipate it like you did a child. Like you readied the room for the kid. Like you got stacks of diapers. You got all this stuff ready for this kid who was coming. And if you knew what was ahead, being stress-free, you'd plan. So we know that less is more, that stress is bad, and giving is good, and that tomorrow matters. I'm just trying to tell you, be faithful in the little things now. And by the way, this matters. This matters. Okay? Look, you're part of church for a purpose, unless you're dragged here. And by the way, if that's the case, just be honest. Just be honest about these things, and learn to apply what you hear. Because this is very important, as we learned several weeks ago. It's not about knowing, it's about doing. And eventually it's going to be worth it to you. Lord, I pray that you bless us now. God, look, you blessed us with gifts. You've blessed us with income. You've blessed us with resources. And they don't really, truly, honestly belong to us. They're from you. So God, what we want to do is we want to honor you. We, Lord, need to begin to be faithful with what you've given us. Even if we've messed up a lot in the past. So Lord, we thank you that you're forgiving. We thank you that you're a redeeming God. So God, please, Lord, help us to have self-control. Give us understanding, give us a plan. And Lord, I honestly believe that one day with all of our hearts, we won't be in bondage to anything this world has to offer. And Lord, just as Jesus set us free from spiritual bondage, you're also going to set us free from this material bondage, this materialism that's in our hearts. And we promise that we will live radically generous along the way, because you're a good God. And you gave us Jesus so we could know you and live forever. So Lord, I pray that may we live in a way today that truly honors you. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's all stand if you feel like responding today.